This is episode 5 of the Fitness Plus Technology Podcast with guest Josh Leve.
Your business skill set has to run parallel to that of your fitness skill set. I mean, the numbers are astronomical. It's over 100,000 fitness studios. I mean, you're talking about over 22 billion with a B in revenue. It's the fastest growing segment in the industry. I mean, you talk about this growth. It's larger than all the health clubs, YMCAs, JCCs, corporate, college universities. I mean, everything, physical therapy locations combined. It's bigger than all of those.
Welcome to the Fitness Plus Technology Podcast for club owners, operators, and fitness professionals. I am your host, Josh Trent, and this is your number one trusted resource for the accelerating world of fitness technology. Each week, we bring you an expert interview with global influencers at the crossroads of fitness and technology. You'll gain the insights, tools, and inspiration you need to stay connected to the pulse of what matters most for your fitness business in the age of exponential technologies. This podcast is brought to you by the Fitness Industry Technology Council, who is mobilizing resources to drive the fitness industry forward and representing leading companies and organizations to success through collaboration. This show is supported by Videri Ventures, a boutique investment and advisory firm helping early mature and late-stage enterprises succeed in a new era. Today on the show, we're exploring the impact of technology on national fitness and wellness studios with the founder and CEO of the Association of Fitness Studios, Josh Leve. I know you're going to enjoy today's episode with Josh as he uncovers what separates successful studios from the pack, why leveraging human connection with technology will lead the way for studios in 2017, and why customization and personalization through collected member data will make the user experience more meaningful no matter what demographic the member. Josh Leve is responsible for the strategic development and growth of the Association of Fitness Studios, and as the founder and CEO, he brings more than 10 years of sales consulting, advertising, marketing, operations, and retail experience to AFS. Josh spent more than a decade in the fitness industry, most recently managing large-scale health clubs and successfully turning around the financial performance of 3 different facilities, while also providing consultative services for the boutique studio market. AFS began from Josh's inspiration through working with his father, Chuck Leve, the founder of URSA, and after seeing trainer after trainer leave the health club space to start their own businesses, yet only to return due to the inability to find proper resources focused on the business of owning and operating a fitness studio. In 2013, Josh launched the Association of Fitness Studios, growing to over 13,000 members. Let's jump into this rich conversation with Josh Leve. Josh, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So excited to talk about not just fitness studios, but the impact of what we're seeing in the landscape for studios and how that relates to people actually changing lives. For people that might not know, talk to us a little bit about this Association of Fitness Studios, how it was formed and who it's for.
So, the association was formed. We formed it about 4 or 5 years ago. We're a relatively new association. And it was really formed out of my passion of kind of growing up in the fitness industry. Both my father and grandfather started trade associations in the fitness industry. My grandfather started the National Court Clubs Association. That was big when there were health clubs racquetball clubs and tennis clubs. And then my father came along and started a little trade association named URSA with the likes of John McCarthy. My father's claim to fame is he created the URSA trade show. Worked for URSA for almost 30 years. I think it was 27. And so I had the opportunity to grow up on the business side of things. I've worked URSA trade shows during my spring break once or twice. And as I graduated from college, I eventually worked my way into managerial roles in Chicago, where I managed big box health clubs. And it just became evident several years ago that there was this movement towards these boutique studios that were popping up all over the place. And I managed a team of about a little over 20 personal trainers and 6 or 7 different Pilates instructors. And it became very evident that a lot of them were leaving to start their own studio. And from that perspective, I thought to myself, well, that's great, but how much of what they know is rooted in business skills? They're great trainers. A lot of times the ones that left were kind of our top producing trainers.
Sure.
And that business side of things was always lacking. And so my father and I went to the drawing board and said, wow, there's a huge opportunity here to support these guys or these girls on, the business skills and provide them with everything that the health club owners and CEOs have received from URSA for so long, but for the studio market in particular, because it's going to be a very, very different approach to business than would be a big box owner. And so that kind of was where the idea stemmed from. And then, of course, doing our due diligence and research, we worked closely with ACE, the American Council on Exercise, with Spry Products, with Sports and Fitness Insurance Corporation, and launched the association about 3-4 years ago. And it's just kind of since then continued to thrive with over 13,000 members and over 60 different partnerships. We're really kind of making waves, and we're incredibly excited to really be supporting this market with this information.
That's a great point, because there's so many trainers that maybe they have a client roster and they've been training for a long time and they're like, you know what, I want to open up a studio of my own. But the ego that might be involved. Talk to us about, some trainers that might have a larger ego than the skills to actually open that studio.
Yeah, delicate subject, but there are many of them out there, and that's great. And I think those that, there's a fine line that you walk between, having, an arrogant approach and being very confident. And I think a lot of trainers who are incredibly successful, whether it's a health club, whether it's a JCC, a YMCA, and a lot of them are looking at, what is my next step? Do I want to be here for the rest of my career? And a lot of times the answer to that is no, but where do I go next? What is that logical next step? And so one of the things that we do at AFS is we do cater to those entrepreneurial fitness professionals that are looking for kind of the next phase in their career. And a lot of times these people come to us, these trainers, these coaches, these instructors that come to us and say, whoa, you know what? This is a huge undertaking. This is a massive shift in my mindset as it relates to starting my own business. I am incredibly well educated in anatomy and in physiology. For us, we tell them that's fantastic, but your business skill set has to run parallel to that of your fitness skill set. And a lot of times they come to us and say, you know what, this has been fantastic. I just don't think I'm ready to go into business yet for myself. And for us, that's a win. Nobody wins if a business goes out of business. Mm-hmm. So from an ego perspective, we really want to make sure that they understand you could be the best trainer. You could have 150 sessions a month or whatever it is. But when you start talking about going into business for yourself, our studio owners, our members understand, and they know you wear every single hat in your business. You have to worry about marketing, whether you have to worry about hiring, where to find trainers, you have to worry about the aesthetics, you have to, every single little thing that you might not be well trained on, all that comes into play when you start going into business for yourself.
We're going to talk here in a minute about what types of studios there are. There's many different brands, many different boutiques out there. One question that came up for me is around passion. You already talked about, your history and your family. I almost feel like fitness is kind of in your DNA.
A little bit.
Why do you do what you do? Before we talk about studios and technology, what is your passion in the fitness industry?
My passion is and always will be to help others kind of find their dream. For me, I've been incredibly fortunate to really create something. It's like your own brainchild, and to see it come to fruition and to see it kind of grow is one of the most rewarding experiences. And I know personally, from working in the health club environment, from working with trainers, from consulting with studios before I started AFS, that there is a desire for the industry not only to become more professional, in nature. I can tell you many different stories of walking into studios where that's not what you see. But, from my perspective, the passion really comes from helping these fitness professionals kind of take the next step in their career and realize that there's more out there for them if they feel lost, if they're not sure what to do with the degree that they have, that there is another platform for them to achieve greatness in whatever it may be. And really, it comes down to the education factor. We really want to provide the services where we get these emails and these phone calls from people that just say, thank you. Thank you so much for these resources. Thank you so much for saving me the time and the headaches and all that stuff. What you guys are providing is so needed and so necessary for our industry. And that's why I do what I do, because I've seen it firsthand. I've talked to struggling studios. I've talked to some of our members that are some of the best of the best. And I want to help them succeed. And I relate it very similarly to how a trainer or a coach or an instructor kind of views their own clients. A client comes to them because they're looking for results. They're looking to change their lives in one way, shape, or form. I look at what we do in the very same way. I want to change the lives of our members for the better. I want them to succeed. I want them to be able to spend more time with their family. I want them just to look at us and say, thank you for what you do. I got one idea that changed my business, or I got one idea from you guys that I didn't know before, whatever it is. That is the essence of community. That's the essence of what an association is. We go to bat for this segment of the market. That's what we're here for, is to support them.
Let's unpack here, dive into what different segments we see. I mean, you have the pulse. You said 13,000 different memberships. I actually go to a studio down here in San Diego. It's called Function First. Anthony Carey, phenomenal place. If anyone's ever in San Diego, definitely go to his studio.
Yeah, we did a studio spotlight on Anthony. He's an ACE certified trainer, really good guy.
He is amazing, man. But let's unpack this a little bit. Josh, when we look at the segments, what do you see out there? I mean, there's fitness studios, there's wellness studios. Explain maybe the types, the size, and the specifications of the landscape.
Great question. So I do a presentation a few times a year, and I actually just did it at Club Industry in Chicago and at the NSCAPT conference, where I asked the audience that pretty much exact question. How many studios, independent studios, do you think there are in the U.S.? And I get numbers from all over. I think a woman said 1 million. I said, God, that'd be great for business, but I wish. But when you start talking about the different disciplines, and this data is public knowledge right now. It's on IBIS World. But what we found and what we uncovered, as far as a personal training perspective, there's just about over 60,000 personal training businesses. When you combine that with Pilates and yoga, that's about 30,000. Martial arts, it's close to 10,000. Dance studios, another close to 10,000. They don't have data on spinning or cycling studios, but you got to think with those that are popping up all over, there's probably a good 10 to 12, maybe 13, 14,000. At the end of the day, when you add it all up, I mean, the numbers are astronomical. It's over 100,000 fitness studios. I mean, you're talking about over 22 billion with a B in revenue, and it's the fastest growing segment in the industry. I mean, you talk about this growth. It's larger than all the health clubs, YMCAs, JCCs, corporate, college universities. I mean, everything, physical therapy locations combined. It's bigger than all of those. I mean, it's such a massive market. And it's true, because if you walk down any major street in any urban market, you're going to find a personal training studio, a yoga studio, a cycling studio, a yoga Pilates studio. I mean, there's so many different types of disciplines that it's not surprising that there's been a lot of growth, but there's so many different reasons as to why.
What do you think about the CrossFit movement? Do you think that that's been tapped? There's so many CrossFit studios everywhere.
CrossFit, I've never taken a CrossFit class. I have friends of mine that started CrossFit boxes, and they are so passionate about it. When you start talking about a tribe, which a lot of times studios like to mention, that this tribal culture of everybody kind of buying into it. I mean, CrossFit, what they've been able to create in the CrossFit Games and the culture and just that community, hats off to them. It's not for everybody. It's definitely focused on a specific demographic. I think a lot of people, with the things that have come out and the injuries and stuff, I think you're talking about 13,000 boxes now. It might be more than that since I checked the last 8 months or so. I think it's phenomenal what they've been able to create. I think it absolutely serves a specific demographic that loves the high intensity interval training and loves the competitions that they put on. Will it withstand? I don't know. A lot of people are looking at the boutique market and saying, well, is this market in general going to continue growing at the rate it is? And it's not. I mean, it'd be crazy to think if it is. It's already kind of oversaturated.
Yeah.
And so from that perspective, I think CrossFit's, I think Orange Theories, I think all these organizations, they're tapping into this movement now. But at the end of the day, it's going to level off. It's going to taper off. And those that are really sound, and I'm not just saying this to sell AFS, I firmly believe this, those that are creating the experiences, those that are well-versed and well-educated in business, they understand how to actually create and grow and have a thriving business, are the ones that are going to be successful, because that's what your health club operators have done. They are educated in business. They understand their market. They do their research. They get on roundtables. They get, so much knowledge from so many other people in the industry, and that's how they're able to move forward. So the studio operators, from that perspective, don't do that. I think they will end up going out of business, which is unfortunate. It happens all the time.
Yeah.
CrossFit, to get in business, I mean, I was very fortunate to have a drink with Randy Hetrick, the CEO of TRX in Chicago. And he was saying, Josh, he goes, I mean, the overhead is so low. For somebody to start a functional training studio, you need a credit card. and you're in business. I mean,
Yeah.
you don't need much equipment. I mean, you could get $5,000 worth of equipment and boom, you're good to go. And that's terrifying, for a trainer who has no understanding of business. And I think that's happening for CrossFits too. I mean, the experience in a CrossFit box is going to be very different no matter where you go.
Yeah.
And it's the same with SoulCycle. I mean, there's SoulCycles in New York, I'm sure, are making $2.5 million in revenue. And they're bringing home a lot of money. Their rent is incredibly expensive, but a SoulCycle in rural Ohio is probably going to be struggling. It just doesn't. It's not the same market.
Yeah.
So there's so many different factors that play into it.
I'm curious about, what came up for me when you were explaining the magnitude. I had no idea of the size of how many independent studios there are.
It's huge.
What do you think is really moving the needle from a technology perspective? So with all these different segments, whether it's dance or wellness or fitness, what are the clubs that are getting members through the door doing right by using tech?
When you start talking about tech, there's a lot of things. Two things that I like to say that the studios that are being really successful are doing is customization and personalization. And when you start talking about tech in general, you can really, through technology, have a very results-driven culture. High-touch results-driven is something that we like to talk about a lot. And when you start talking about tech, you get this opportunity to really do a variety of different things. It provides those studios who engage with it certain advantages. You're able to, again, personalize the experience that somebody has when they walk in. There's so much data that is being provided by using tech. You can better assess different fitness levels, so you can kind of tailor whatever the workouts around, the data that you're receiving. You can modify their activity. You can really become an expert as a trainer. You kind of know from, an exercise perspective what workouts to do and what exercises to put people through. But from tech and from being able to better understand the data is key. And you really have the ability now to make sense of what you're seeing and put that together from a programming perspective, which I think, honestly, from my perspective, is one of the most exciting things about the future of this industry and where it's going as it relates to heart rate training and wearables and sensors and all that stuff. But I don't want to get ahead of myself.
Sure.
You start talking about tech. That was a major emphasis for us and what we look for, especially in trends coming in the next few years, how everything's going to be integrated.
Speaking of trends, there was a 2016 marketing best practices research report. We're going to link that in the show notes today. One of the key pieces that I thought was really unique is what marketing strategies proved to be the most effective in 2015. 59% were client and member referral programs. Talk about that, how that's specific to studios.
Yeah, great question. So it's no surprise studios don't have the big budgets that their health club counterparts might have. These are guys that, what we also found in that same report is that I think it was 57% don't have a 12-month marketing plan, which is kind of scary, when you start talking about being able to generate traffic and stuff. So when you start talking about client and member referral programs, that is one of the most successful ones. And it makes sense because it doesn't cost a lot of money. And it goes back to what we talked about before. It's all about high-touch, results-driven. It's about creating this experience that could never be emulated in a traditional big box facility. And it's why studios are becoming so successful. Because when you walk into a studio, it's an intimate environment. And it's something where when you walk in, it's not even that you're just meeting with your trainer, but there's a sense, there's a culture there that you're always provided with this sense of together we can do anything. And you're provided with this inspiration, not just from your coach or your trainer, but also from the other members or clients that go there. And when we were doing our research, somebody once told us, they said, our customers know we care about them and they also care about us. And it's important to also realize too, from that perspective, and I'll get into the member referrals and how this all relates, because a fitness studio by its very nature is ingrained in the community. And consumers expect authenticity from the businesses they buy from, which of course is linked to trust. And when you're a fitness studio and you're ingrained in the community and you're going to the local chamber of commerce events and you're partnering with other, mom and pop shops and stuff, there is something so genuine about that people, if they have a great experience in your facility, they're going to tell their friends. And that is something that studios have to leverage. They have to leverage the experiences that they're providing to get more people in the door. And that's always what we see. And one of the things I always like to talk about when you talk about word of mouth marketing and referrals is something I like to call the 5 T's of word of mouth marketing, where you really leverage the people that come to your studio or to your business and but leverage them with referrals. And the 5 T's are called talkers. It's basically, and I love asking this question when I present, telling people these are the people that come to your facility all the time. And you probably know a little bit more about their personal life than you really want to, but they're the ones that
they want connection. They want human connection.
Absolutely. They love talking to you about what their plans are for the weekend. You know about their family, you know about what's going on in their lives, and that's fantastic. And these are also people that more often than not have, they come quite often and they've seen results. These are your talkers. These are the people that you want to leverage because they're going to talk about you once they leave the facility. And so by finding those talkers, you're able to provide them the tools to make sure that they do talk to people and refer them back to your business. And so once you provide them the tools, you want to make sure that you really kind of take part in that experience. You want to make sure that they're given not only the tools to be successful, but you take part in making sure that the people that kind of come in have some type of, experience that is second to none. The people that become your talkers, you want to set them up with providing them the topics to really kind of talk to others about. And then a lot of it comes down to tracking and things of that nature. So there's a strategy behind word of mouth and referrals. There was a great story I like to talk about. There was a studio owner in downstate Illinois, and she started a boot camp on a Saturday morning with some women in her neighborhood, and it ended up taking off. And she ended up raising the money, and she started a women's only studio. I think it was about 3,000 or 4,000 square feet. And she called it Fit Mama, FITMAMA. And what she did in order to grow her business, I think she's got about 350 members now, her clients. She actually created brand ambassadors, which of course is, another way to get referrals and leverage the people that come to your business. She gave them all pink t-shirts, and every single pink t-shirt said, "I'm a Fit Mama." She gave every single one of these brand ambassadors a specific discount. I think she had an annual membership. And again, this can be tailored to whomever, whatever works best for somebody's business. And she gave them a 30% discount, I think, on the annual membership. And I think there was a contract that she drew up that they referred people to her. And these were people that, again, had seen results from her. They loved what they did, and they became her brand ambassadors. And what better way to get client referrals than to kind of leverage the people that are already passionate about what you do.
That is such an incredible story, because we've referenced this on a different show, but I believe this is so impactful to what we're talking about when it comes to the touch points, what people's expectations are. You talked about customization, personalization, member referrals. There was an article that was from the New York Post, and it was titled "Millennials Are Killing Gyms Too." And it talked about how there was a different consumer report from IRSA where the Gen Xers, the millennials, the Gen Xers are content with treadmills and maybe some resistance machines. But millennials, they're actually being magnetically drawn towards specialized classes, yoga, CrossFit studio, Soul Cycle. Why do you think this is? I mean, what do millennials want when we look at that space in the studio market?
It's interesting because I think from a millennial standpoint, and I'm not a millennial, but I have done research.
I'm 1980, so I'm like right on the cusp. I'm like
79.
1 foot in, 1 foot out. Yeah.
Yeah. So I got to beat by a year. But, from a millennial perspective, it's interesting. And I'm one of those people. I like to run, I like to work out, and I like to throw in my headphones and get my workout in. And it's my time to kind of, be to myself with my own thoughts. But millennials, from what we're seeing, and this is, of course, not everybody, but they like to work out in groups, Soul Cycle, Orange Theory, a lot of these classes, boot camps, it's a communal feel. And I think what we're seeing, millennials have such an impact on trends. When you start talking about what really goes, I mean, just look at our smartphones, right? You know what I mean? Something as simple as Uber or Lyft or something like that. I mean, that is not something that our parents or we are somebody that kind of found out. It's like, hey, look at this great app. That's something that was generated by the millennial kind of, demographic where they started using it. And then it kind of trickles, I guess you could say, up in terms of age to those that typically wouldn't have known about it. It starts with the millennial generation. And I mean, that is something that when they get behind something, when they get passionate about something, it kind of drives a lot of other buying habits. And I mean, that is so evident in an organization, in a company called ClassPass, where ClassPass, as many of you listening probably know, is exploded onto the fitness scene, especially from the boutique studio market.
Sure.
And a lot of their traffic and their customer base are millennials, and they're all for group classes. And I think, from that perspective, it's just it's a little bit of a different demographic. They enjoy the social aspect of what it brings. I think there's something there that say, hey, I'm going to go take spin today. All right, come with me. There's that communal feel that a studio provides, and that's what millennials enjoy. And there's no surprise that it's kind of a marriage made in heaven, if you will. That's what's driving the growth.
Yeah, and I know the ClassPass is 8,000 plus studios. You have 13,000 that are in your organization as members. But as you had mentioned, there are tens of thousands of studios that are just operating off of their passion and their drive. Let's shift into how technology is helping them from a business perspective and from a consumer experience perspective. What are you seeing out there for the tech pieces and the technology solutions that are really moving the needle on both those categories?
I think it's something that is constantly evolving with technology. And with technology, of course, what you're going to see is technology making a greater impact in the studio space, because it is something that an owner can rely on and be able to pull a few reports to have an understanding of where they're at, whether it's, they have EFT or whatever it may be. From a software perspective, you've got your behemoths like MindBody that have just taken the industry by storm from a CRM perspective. But there's so many other things that studios can do to leverage technology that I think will make a really big impact in the future. Technology is one of those things for a studio owner makes so much sense, because as we mentioned before, these guys are doing everything. And to be able to have a platform where you can either upload client data, where you have credit cards on file, where you understand where everybody is from a billing perspective, when you can run reports, from a marketing perspective, whether it's Constant Contact or, e-newsletters, all this stuff, and you can have it all in one place. To an owner who is strapped for time, that is worth so much. And I think what we're going to see in the future is even more connectivity. So we talk about, well, that's great, when you start talking about the financial side of things and check-ins and stuff like that. But I think in the future, when you start talking tech, you really have to look at, well, what happens when my client, as a studio owner talking, what happens when my client leaves? I really don't know all that much what he's doing or she's doing. She might go for a run, or she might go to the health club and work out, or she might go take a spinning class, or whatever it may be. I think what we're going to see in the future are software platforms coming out, technology platforms that are or wearables or something that's going to be all interactive, all connected, so that when you come back, when you check in to the studio for your session or for a class, whatever it may be, whether you give the studio owner your phone and it uploads all the data, there's going to be so much more information that's going to be trackable based off of what somebody does once they leave. And I know there's platforms out there now,
sure,
but it's really going to be up, to the owner to be able to make sense of all that data and to be able to better analyze that data, like we were talking about, that will kind of be able to kind of customize the person's experience, because there's going to be a lot more coming out. And so they're going to have to be educated on really kind of how to leverage all of it.
One of the studios here in San Diego, it's Fitwall, and I believe they're opening up locations all the time. They have an incredibly high touch point when it comes to tech. There's an iPad at each station. Mm-hmm. It knows when you've came into the club. It sends you reports. They use heart rate tracking in real time. We see this in Orange Theory. What are maybe a couple of pieces of tech when it comes to the consumer experience? What are the consumers excited about? And studios like Fitwall, what are they doing right? How are they meeting the consumer need right?
What I think they're doing, I think it's an education perspective. When you get an average consumer coming in, we could take a company such as Orange Theory. I was just talking to a good friend of mine just this past weekend who just started going to Orange Theory. He played soccer. He's relatively active, but didn't know much about what they did. He was asking my opinion. I said, they're great for what you're looking for. So we went, and he was showing me on their app how they would track just, your heart rate and your exertion levels and stuff like that. And I think those facilities, when you start talking about tech, are doing such a phenomenal job in educating the typical consumer on why this is important. It all comes down to an education perspective, not only for a studio owner to be successful, but even the consumer to get successful in driving those results. And so to be able to to talk with him and say, yeah, my average heart rate was, 154 beats per minute. And, this is what we did. And this was, what we're planning on. It gets them excited. It gets them, focused in on real data that I think could be so beneficial to kind of track your progress. When I go out running, I there's never a time I don't have a heart rate monitor on, just because I use my running app, and I love the coaching in my ear, and I love being able to compare to see how I'm improving.
Sure.
And I think from a consumer's perspective, technology is only going to become more and more ingrained in what we do, to be able to, again, to educate them on if you're really seeing the progress that you want. I mean, from a heart rate perspective, there's going to be so many other sensors coming out that are going to measure so many different things that I think the consumer is going to want to know that information. And I think it's going to be up to the studio owner to be able to provide that information and make sense of all of it.
When we look at technology, there's this paradigm that I think is shifting very much so in the next couple of years. And it's technology versus the human, or the human versus the technology. A lot of people feel like technology can take away human touch, but you talked about the busy studio owner's life. They're managing, their studio. They have phone calls and emails. They're also training clients and managing a staff. I don't think they've ever been as stressed out as they are now. What do you think is going to ease that stress? And what do you think the future looks like for this operator having a lot less stress and a lot more time actually living their passion, working with their passion?
Really good question. I think from the perspective of, technology, and for the studio operator in the future to be able to live their passion, not be stressed out all the time, I think there's going to absolutely need to be a balance. I mean, at the end of the day, they got into this business. You're into this business because it is a passion and you love changing people's lives. That's what it's all about. And from that perspective, I don't think that's ever anything that you should stop doing. Yes, you have to focus on your business. That's incredibly important, and technology will absolutely be here to help.
Yeah.
And as far as where it's going to be in the future, it's difficult to say, but I think more and more will be coming out that we're going to be able to leverage. But that human touch point, that coach, that motivator of what you're trying to do, from that perspective, it's going to be one of these things that you're going to, whether your business continues to thrive or something, you're going to have to find that happy medium. How much can you rely on technology from an operational standpoint, and how much are you going to want to take on yourself? It might be one of these things that you have to scale back a little bit, still continue to train on the side based off of what you can pretty much kind of take. And then what else can you leverage technology for yourself? I was on a roundtable discussion the other day, and it was a really interesting discussion just about, we did talk about technology actually, and talking about how, others have been able to leverage it from the perspective of, there's so much that I can input into the database. And I think they were just talking about mind body at the time. But, it's been able to ease the stress, because they, in the past, my gosh, if there are others out there listening in that, are still just taking checks for payments and stuff, I mean, that causes stress. And something as simple as being able to have a credit card on file for somebody to make sure that you don't have to worry about running after clients, to make sure you get a payment. I mean, we all know that awkward experience sometimes if you've ever walked into a health club, whether you worked in a health club or in a studio, and somebody's past due. What do? You don't want to stop them in front of 5 other people that are waiting to check in and say, hey, your credit card declined your payment. It's the worst experience that somebody can get. Well, now with technology, if you have a credit card on file, or if it's past due, you can get an automatic email generated to that person that says, hey, by the way, it looks like your credit card's outdated, or give them a call, in the privacy of an office. Those are little things that we didn't have access to before that have eased the stress off of a current studio owner or business owner. And I think that's only going to continue in the future from, again, from an operational standpoint. From a training perspective, that'll be interesting. I think that's more along what we've talked about before, about analyzing the client's data and building programming around it.
You see the pulse of the industry, whether it's a CrossFit gym, a Soul Cycle, whatever it is. What are your thoughts around takeaways for a club operator or a studio owner, or even a fitness professional who's thinking about opening up their own studio listening today? How can they use, as a parting comment, technology specifically to increase touch points and positive impact for a successful studio?
So from the perspective, I'll take that in two chunks. The first chunk, if you're thinking about going out there and starting your business, the first thing I always recommend is get as much information as possible. Do your research, walk in, talk to other business owners, find a mentor. Through AFS, that's something, of course, we can assist with, but get as much information as you possibly can about your market. Get as much information as you can about others that have gone into business for themselves. See if it's something that you're ready for. It's a huge undertaking, and there's so many different moving pieces. So if from that perspective, whether you're conducting a SWOT analysis, a target market analysis, whatever it may be, there's an education side of that it is absolutely necessary. And then, of course, that's something AFS can help with. And from a technology standpoint, when you're thinking about going into business, from a tech standpoint, there are so many different resources out there to leverage, whether it's just getting online and finding out, what's working, what's not from a trend perspective, understanding different key performance indicators that are being utilized by other studios so you understand what to track and measure, whether it is a simple MindBody for bookkeeping, whether it is a simple, Infusionsoft platform that really tracks and is able to kind of leverage your drip marketing campaign. So if people click on something, it initiates, another type of email that goes out. Things like that, I think, are going to be incredibly beneficial for this market. And I know that's something we actually didn't touch on too much from a marketing perspective. There are so many different tech companies out there that help with your email marketing, that help with certain things based off of what people click on your website, based off of their interests. Being really able to customize the experience that people receive based off of what they're looking for, I think is only going to be more and more important in the future. And, for a trainer or a coach or an instructor out there looking to start their business, it comes down to research. It comes down to when you do start your business, what tech platforms are out there that are going to make your job easier, and being really able to leverage that and understand how they work. Mm-hmm. Because at the end of the day, it's going to do what they want. It's going to save them time. It's going to give them the opportunity to spend more time, possibly, not so much working in their business, working on their business, and really just making sure that they drive their business forward in a way that works best for them and their family and what they're looking to accomplish.
I think this is one of the most exciting parts, is that now we're seeing that technology, which for a long time, Josh, it took away people's ability to connect. Now it's actually producing more connection by freeing up time. And I think that's the big one that you've talked about a lot today. This has been such a great conversation. For everyone listening, Josh is going to be contributing to the 2017 Fitness Industry Tech Council Trends Report. Josh is going to be talking more about studios there and technology and what really moves the needle for successful clubs. Thanks so much, Josh, for coming on the show today. We really appreciate what you do in the industry and spending some time with us.
No, my pleasure. Thank you for having me, Josh. I appreciate it.
The future of successful studios will be the ones that do customization and personalization best. Taking all the collected data and making it meaningful will separate those savvy studios from the rest of the pack. The consumer of today expects authenticity and a high-touch experience from their studio. After all, a fitness studio by nature is deeply ingrained in the local community. Make sure your business education and skill set runs parallel of your fitness education. Attending conferences, workshops, masterminds, and the like will allow you to see what others are using from a technology standpoint to differentiate themselves and determine if it's right for you. Thank you for spending some time with me on the Fitness Plus Technology Podcast. I want to thank our sponsors, Videri Ventures and the Fitness Industry Technology Council. You can learn more about becoming a valued partner with FitC, as well as access all the links and resources from today's show by heading over to fittechcouncil.org/podcast. If you're listening on your phone, tap the show artwork and the live link will appear in purple. Support this podcast by leaving us a 5-star review on iTunes. If you've gotten value and been able to take inspired action from the guests and information on this show, head on over to fittechcouncil.org/review and you can leave your voice to be heard live on the iTunes airwaves. Or just simply tap that show artwork and the review link will be in purple for you to leave right from your phone. Next week, we have another phenomenal show with an expert guest to inspire you at the crossroads of fitness and technology. So until I see you again next week, be well, have an amazing day, and go out there to connect online and offline with the people you care about most.